Hi, welcome to Physionic, where we learn the body from the macro to the micro. If that's something you think you'd be interested in, then consider subscribing. Okay guys, today's video is the beginning of a new series. I've been trying to come out with these different styles of videos on top of kind of the foundational videos, which I'm most proud of, the Nick videos. And this is going to be called the Examine series. So the Examine series is essentially looking at other people's work and investigating the merit, the good and the bad of the claims that they make in those videos, or however they end up expressing their ideas. So without further ado, that's it. So in this video, we're going to take a look at a video by Gregory O. Gallagher of Kinobody and his supplement stack. So without further ado, let's jump right into it.
Basically, a few years ago, I was really, my message was really supplements are not important. It's all about training and nutrition, and people think supplements are way more important than they are, and they focus more on what supplements they take than their training and nutrition. And that's true. Training and nutrition is way more important than the supplements you take.
He's actually starting out really well. It's absolutely true. I do agree with him that a lot of people focus a lot, especially in the beginning. When you start getting into training, you get really excited about wanting to build a lot of muscle. You think about you have a hard time distinguishing between what's an effective supplement, what's an ineffective supplement. And you hear a lot of claims like it's as powerful as a steroid, or it's 3 times more powerful than anabolic steroids. I mean, you see all kinds of different claims out there. People get so wrapped up in these supplements that they fail to consider that bottom line is the foundation is you have to work on nutrition and you have to work on training, and that is literally 95% of any sort of progress that you might see. So in that regard, I do agree with him.
This is a big deal. So the first thing that I take, and this is what my company formulated, because really there was no pre-workout on the market that I was down for. They all had way too much caffeine, way too much stimulant. So if I took it that night, I'd be tossing and turning. I couldn't sleep, so my recovery would be diminished. And furthermore, a lot of those pre-workouts, they're filled with chemicals. Some of them have traces of amphetamines.
So I wanted to quick touch on his point about a lot of supplements. I shouldn't say a lot, but a few supplements being cracked down for having amphetamines, methamphetamines traced in them, and that's actually true. There was a particular supplement, I don't exactly remember the name of it, a few years ago, that for the first batch that they released, they actually had traces of meth in them, and essentially I guess the idea was to get people hooked on it, and then they removed whatever traces there were and actually just had the supplement itself. So then people were actually wondering why it wasn't quite as effective in terms of its impact in terms of increasing their energy, and this was a specific pre-workout. So he's not wrong about that. Is that going to be the case for the vast majority of supplements? No, especially if you look at really reputable companies, but it can certainly happen, especially with the lack of regulation.
Octane, I take this every day. Even if I'm not training, I'll take it because I just get a nice energy boost, good mood support. But basically what it is it's 150 milligrams of caffeine, so the same as like a coffee or Americano. And it's got the L-theanine to really balance out the energy boost, and it works synergistically with caffeine.
Okay, so let's discuss his first supplement that he takes, which is his own supplement, Octane. And within that Octane supplement that he created, he uses caffeine. And that's actually an incredibly reputable molecule to use in a pre-workout. And it isn't by chance that a lot of different pre-workouts use different caffeine levels. Some of them actually don't have caffeine, and those are kind of the stimulatory, free pre-workouts, and they try and find ways around it, but in all honesty, caffeine just has a significant impact. So caffeine does actually increase our power output. It does increase our ability to maintain power throughout particular sets, and it can have substantial impact if you're not interested in weightlifting. It can actually have substantial impact in long distance training. So caffeine has a bunch of different effects, and of course its effect on adenosine can actually also modulate how tired or how fatigued you get during your workout. So caffeine, no doubt, There's a good reason why a lot of it is put into pre-workout supplements. Now, of course, on the tail end of that is sometimes you get so much caffeine that you feel like you're cracked out. Now, I understand you don't necessarily want that feeling. So 150 milligrams for a particular supplement. Honestly, you could go higher than that and probably see a little bit better benefits, but 150 milligrams is perfectly normal, at least to get that anti-fatigue effect. Now, he mentions a molecule by the name of L-theanine, which is found in his Octane supplement. And what this actually does is it synthesizes, and it's in our biosynthesis, we can actually create molecules from this L-theanine called gamma-aminobutyric acid, so GABA. And essentially what this does is it has an impact on your brain, but also an impact on generally your entire central nervous system. And if you have higher levels of this GABA, that's kind of the acronym for it, you actually see greater relaxation. So in that capacity, L-theanine would have an impact on kind of relaxing and having a mood stabilizer in a way. But the problem is that the studies that have been done on L-theanine have been less than convincing in terms of having an impact on a general population. So they've actually found that it is effective, and it's found in green tea. That's probably why he's so crazy about it. But it's had an impact on people who are anxiety riddled. So they have a lot of issues with anxiety already. So their baseline in terms of most likely they probably have lower levels of this GABA. So increasing the amount of this L-theanine theoretically could maybe, again, I'm throwing in a lot of different words here, like maybe and theoretically, because I'm not saying that I'm necessarily convinced by any of this. I'm just giving you some potential perspective. So this L-theanine could lead to increases in GABA. But if you have no issues with anxiety, then the evidence is pretty weak in terms of its actual impact on relaxation. Not to mention, if you're going to be taking caffeine and you're going to be taking a relaxer, that doesn't really make sense, because those are antagonistic situations there. Those are antagonistic molecules, not necessarily directly on one another, but indirectly. So caffeine is going to be increasing your excitement, for lack of a better word, your anxiety about lifting. And then you've got this L-theanine, which is going to be doing the exact opposite. So really, I mean, could it work? Yeah, I suppose, but based off the literature that I've looked at briefly, it doesn't seem that that would probably be a great combination.
And we got Lcitrulline, which the research really shows it actually speeds up recovery, increases blood flow, helps increase growth hormone. It keeps your energy high, increases work capacity, so you have more energy at the end of your workout. So it's been very, very helpful.
The next molecule that he mentions is called Lcitrulline. Now, Lcitrulline, based on a few things that he mentioned, increases growth hormone. And that is actually true. But it only increases growth hormone during the exercise period and does not seem to have an impact, or at least a significant impact, in basal states. So that being the case, how long are you going to be exercising? Maybe an hour and a half, 2 hours at most. And you're going to find that maybe you see a slight increase in growth hormone, but after that, what's going to happen? It's just going to go back to baseline, and for the rest of the day, you're going to be at baseline growth hormone. So kind of relying on this increase in growth hormone probably doesn't hold a whole lot of weight. Now, the other thing is that it does modulate blood flow. Interestingly, though, the studies that have looked at blood flow in Lcitrulline, they have found an effect. So Lcitrulline does increase blood flow, probably through the nitric oxide pathway, which tends to vasodilate our veins and arteries, especially our arteries. But the problem with that is the study looked at pathological individuals. So they looked at individuals that had problems with restrictive blood flow. So those individuals already were in a pathological state. So opening it up to a normal state, a normotensive state, that can be helpful. So Lcitrulline can be helpful in that capacity, but in terms of its impact for people that already have really great flexibility in their arteries and are able to open up, don't have issues with hypertension, don't have issues with atherosclerosis, then most likely Lcitrulline is not going to have a significant impact at actually increasing that blood flow. And even if it does, that does not 100% mean that you're going to see increases in exercise adaptability. So that means that you're not necessarily going to see greater muscle growth or better performance or anything like that. It could mean that, but it doesn't necessarily mean that.
We also have some ginseng in here. I mean, if you guys haven't tried this, try this out. It's been a game changer for me.
And the final one that he talks about for his supplement is ginseng. Ginseng does seem to have an anti-fatigue effect. Now, that said, again, if you are not fatigued, it does not lead to a boost in cognitive function. However, if you are fatigued, it does seem to delay that fatigue, or at least holds it off for a period of time. So if we apply that to maybe exercise, could it have an impact? I think yes, it could. If you, let's say, exercise for an hour and a half and you start really getting worn down, especially cognitively, in terms of your ability to concentrate, maybe ginseng could have a modulatory impact and kind of stave off that tiredness or that fatigue till later on, till after your workout. So in that way, it could help.
Now, the second thing that I've been using, and this one's a bit of a controversial one, because a lot of the answer really, it's BCA. So I get a natural BCA. I'm using this one. It's kind of overpriced, but you can check it out. It's flavored with stevia instead of sucralose. But I take BCAs now. A lot of the research reports that if you're getting enough protein every day, then there's no need for BCAs. My shoulder's dying. There's no need or benefit for BCAs, and that, quite possibly could be true. But during the fasted state, when you're training, BCAAs will help prevent protein breakdown. It actually increases your metabolism after your workout by taking amino acids before, and furthermore, helps get the protein synthesis, the muscle building process started. So, you know what? I probably get sufficient protein every day because I eat about 140 grams of protein per day, which is pretty much sufficient. But taking the BCAAs, my workouts are better. And what I've also noticed when I train fasted, when I used to go full fasted, my energy would kind of diminish near the end of the workout, or I'd get really hungry. The 10 grams of BCAAs, my energy stays high as well with the Octane, and I don't get hungry with just that 10 grams of BCAAs. So technically, yes, if you're training fasted, the BCAAs will break your fast, but it's like 65 calories. It's not a big deal.
All right, so the second supplement that he takes is BCAAs, or branched chain amino acids, which is made up of leucine, isoleucine, and valine. Now he does mention that branched chain amino acids are a controversial subject. And they certainly are, but the science seems to point towards they are unnecessary and may actually impede the ability for the actual muscle cell to go into a protein synthetic pathway, mainly because a lot of these, I guess I shouldn't say a lot, there's only 3 of them. These 3 molecules can sometimes compete with one another in the intestinal wall. So that said, if you see this leucine, for example, which is probably the most potent to attach to the mTOR pathway, which then leads to protein synthetic response, you'll see this initial climb in protein synthesis markers, but then it suddenly decreases. And that's mainly because the muscle cell doesn't have the other amino acids that it needs. But then he mentions that it could help with protein breakdown. And I don't think there's a whole lot of research on this. And it certainly could be that BCAAs could decrease protein breakdown. But I want you to think about this, that you constantly have turnover in your muscle cell and you want some protein breakdown to occur because you're trying to break up some of those non-functional proteins. So essentially getting rid of protein breakdown or lessening it isn't always a good idea. I'm not saying that this is necessarily one of those situations, but what I am saying is that you can't necessarily equate protein breakdown or decreasing protein breakdown as necessarily a good outcome. Now, in terms of BCAAs having an impact on muscle mass, so kind of completely eliminating protein synthesis and protein breakdown and just looking at BCAAs and having an impact on your total muscle mass, and it doesn't seem to have much of an impact. So I'm not really that convinced that you need to be taking BCAAs and that he should necessarily be taking BCAAs. Now, another thing he mentions is that there's an increase in your energy levels. Well, frankly, you could just be taking glucose for that and you would see an increase in your energy levels as well. What he's talking about, he probably doesn't even know this himself, but what he's talking about, isoleucine or valine, I believe it's valine actually, that can go into a gluconeogenic pathway, which then leads to an increase in glucose. So really, in all reality, he could have just taken glucose and it probably would have had the exact same effect.
Third thing I've taken is, actually I put the creatine in here, but I take about 5 to 7 grams of creatine monohydrate per day. I mix it with the Octane. That's helped me get stronger, add lean body mass. Creatine's got pretty cool benefits. It reduces the risk of Alzheimer's, increases short-term memory, so your memory's sharper. It's an amazing compound, very effective stuff. It's one of the most researched supplements in the world. The stuff works. If you want to optimize your training and muscle building, I would take creatine as well.
The next supplement that he talks about is creatine, and I'm assuming he's talking about creatine monohydrate. He seems to be relatively well educated on that topic. And the truth is that creatine is 100% a fantastic molecule to be consuming and has a lot of profound benefits. He touches on a few of them, and I agree with all of them. That said, the only qualm that I have is that he takes 5 to 7 grams. Really, the recommendation is around 3 to 5 grams. It's a small point, but honestly, if you're going to be taking 7 grams, if you weigh under 200 pounds, you're wasting your money. You should be taking between that 3 to 5 grams. If you're a woman, typically you want to consume around that 3 gram range. If you're a smaller man, around that 3 to 4 gram range. If you are a larger man, then consider, or a larger woman, if you're just a beast, then maybe consider taking about 5 grams, and that should be sufficient.
And finally, well, not quite finally, but the other thing I'm taking, let me grab it 1 second. Where are those damn vitamin Ds? In the winter time in Canada, I'm not getting much sun exposure. Vitamin D is one of the most important vitamins you can possibly take. Reduces inflammation, improves cognitive function, reduces the risk of numerous diseases, helps support optimal testosterone in men. It's important for hormonal functioning. So I take these chewy candies because they taste so good, I never forget to take them.
The last one that I'm going to be covering is his intake of vitamin D. And again, I don't really have any issues with that at all. Especially as he mentioned, he's in Canada, so it's going to be a lot colder. You're not going to get outside as much. It's going to be cloudy. You're not going to get as much sun exposure in general. So yes, supplementing with vitamin D might not be a bad idea, and it does have a lot of different health functions, especially considering you're talking about a micronutrient that is incredibly important in all these different cellular processes. Funny enough, I have an article and video that will be released on this channel talking about vitamin D and its processing and its metabolism and things of that nature. So if you want to know more about that in the actual science of it, then you can be sure to check that out when it comes out. Okay, well, with that said, that is the video. Hopefully, if you found this kind of content informative and you really do enjoy it, me kind of breaking down what other people have said and kind of going into the physiology a little bit or going into the science a little bit, then let me know in the comments below. I would really love to hear your feedback. And with that, I will hopefully have the pleasure of speaking with you next time. Have a good one, guys. See ya.